There is something that happens the first time you step inside a Japanese home. You can't name it at first. You look around and try to identify what's different. It's not that the furniture is expensive, because often it isn't. It's not that the space is large, because most Japanese homes are remarkably small. It's not even that everything is perfectly decorated. What you feel is something rarer than all of that. You feel calm. A deep, immediate, almost physical calm. Like the house itself is breathing, like the space is holding you gently instead of pressing you from all sides. And after a while you begin to realize this feeling didn't happen by accident. It was built. Not with money, not with design, not with a specific furniture style. It was built with rules, not the kind of rules written in books or posted on walls. The invisible kind, the unspoken kind. The kind passed from grandmother to mother, from mother to child. Not as lessons, but as lived reality. These are the rules that govern a Japanese home. Not every home follows every one of them. But these 30 appear again and again across generations, across regions, across centuries of Japanese domestic life. And one of them, number 3 on our list today, is so counterintuitive, so completely opposite to how most people in the Western world think about organization, that it might permanently change how you see your own home. Let's start at number 30. 30. Genkan no okite. The law of the threshold. There is a place at the entrance of every Japanese home that has no equivalent in most Western cultures. It's called the Genkan. It is not quite inside the home and not quite outside. It is a deliberate in-between space, a transition zone, where a specific and non-negotiable rule applies. Shoes come off here, always, without exception. But here's what most people don't understand about the Genkan. It isn't primarily about keeping the floors clean. That's a side effect. The real purpose is psychological. When you remove your shoes at the Genkan, you perform a small but deeply significant act of separation. You leave behind the street, the office, the traffic, the conversations that drained you, the meetings that didn't go well, the noise of the outside world. All of it stays at the threshold. You enter the home as a different version of yourself. Lighter, quieter, ready to be at home. Japanese children learn this not as a chore, but as a natural transition, the way you might learn to wash your hands before eating. It becomes so automatic that doing otherwise feels genuinely wrong, like arriving somewhere and refusing to take off a coat. You don't need a Genkan to apply this principle. A mat at the door, a small basket for shoes, a bench to sit on as you remove them. The physical action is the same, and the psychological effect, the act of consciously leaving outside things outside, is available to everyone. The chaos of the world does not have to enter your home with you. Decide that the threshold means something. 29. Mono wo Yukani Okana. Never store things on the floor. Walk through a Japanese home and look down. The floors are almost always clear, not because Japanese people have fewer possessions than anyone else, but because of a rule so ingrained it operates below the level of conscious thought. The floor is not storage. Bags do not live on the floor. Boxes do not sit in corners. Clothes do not make piles on the ground. Even in small apartments with genuine space limitations, you will almost never find objects simply left on the floor. The reason goes beyond aesthetics. In Japanese spatial thinking, a clear floor creates a room that breathes. Visually, objects at ground level are the most psychologically oppressive. They shrink the room. They create the subconscious feeling of being trapped, surrounded, closed in. A floor with things on it communicates disorder, even when shelves and surfaces are organized. A clear floor, on the other hand, does something remarkable. It makes a small room feel large. It makes a simple room feel elegant. It transforms the visual experience of a space instantly and completely. The practical implication is this. Everything needs a home above the floor. A hook, a shelf, a drawer, a basket on a shelf, a hanger. If something is regularly ending up on the floor, the solution is not more willpower. The solution is to create a proper place for it above the ground. The floor is not for objects. The floor is for living. 28. Sukatraasugu modosu, return it the moment you finish using it. In Japanese, there is an expression that translates roughly as return immediately after using. Not eventually, not when it's convenient, not when you get around to it. Immediately. Scissors used at the desk go back to their drawer the moment you set them down. The measuring tape goes back to the kitchen drawer before you return to the living room. The book goes back to its shelf when you stop reading, not when you finish the chapter, not when you go to bed now. To Western ears, this can sound almost obsessive. But spend time inside it, and you discover it's actually the opposite of obsessive. It's liberating. When objects always return immediately, they are always where you expect them. You never spend 5 minutes searching for the scissors because the scissors are always in the same place. Always, without exception. The cognitive load of a misplaced object, the minor frustration, the broken focus, the search, the irritation, the putting off tasks because you can't find what you need, all of this simply ceases to exist. Return immediately feels like a small habit. In practice, it restructures the entire experience of moving through your home. Your home stops working against you and starts working with you. 27. Shokaji no seichi. The dining table is sacred. In many Japanese homes, there is an unwritten rule about the dining table. It is for eating, not for homework, not for mail, not for working on the laptop, not for piling things that have nowhere else to go. When it is not mealtime, the table is either empty or hosts one simple element, a small plant. A single bowl with a piece of fruit, a candle, nothing more. This rule does something that seems almost magical. It preserves the meaning of meals. When a table is always cluttered, meals become something you eat around the edges of other things. They lose their character as a pause, as a gathering, as a moment of nourishment that is separate from productivity. When the table is clear and ready, the act of sitting down to eat has weight. It is a distinct event. You are here now, eating, present. Clear tables are not about decoration. They are about preserving the ritual of gathering. 26. Nagashi wo wokasu. Always leave the sink dry. After every use, a Japanese sink is wiped dry. After washing hands, after washing dishes, after rinsing vegetables, a few seconds with a small towel or cloth hung right there for exactly this purpose. It sounds insignificant, and in isolation, it is. But compound it across days, weeks, years, and you understand something important. A dry sink never develops water stains. A dry sink doesn't breed mildew at the edges. A dry sink always looks clean, even when it hasn't been deep cleaned in days. More than that, a dry sink signals care. It communicates that someone is paying attention to this home. And that signal, even when no one else sees it, changes how the person who lives there relates to the space. We clean what we respect. And we respect what we clean. Wipe the sink. Every time. Not because it matters in this single moment. Because of who you become when you do it 10,000 times. 25. Ai no koe wo kiku. Listen to what the house is telling you. Japanese people who grew up in traditional homes often describe an almost animate relationship with the house itself. They notice when a floorboard begins to creak differently, when a drawer starts sticking, when a window doesn't close as cleanly as it did, when a smell appears that wasn't there before, and they respond quickly. Not out of anxiety, but out of the same instinct that makes you pay attention when a friend's voice sounds different. The rule here is not about maintenance in the mechanical sense. It is about attention, about treating the home as something alive enough to deserve your notice. Small problems noticed early are always smaller to fix. A stuck drawer addressed now is 5 minutes. The same drawer ignored for 2 years might be a broken rail, a swollen cabinet, a replacement. But more than practicality, there is something in this attention that transforms your relationship to your home. You stop experiencing it as a passive backdrop to your life and start experiencing it as something you are in conversation with. Listen to the house. It is always telling you something. 24. Neoi no conri, the invisible rule of smell. Most people focus on how their home looks. The Japanese also focus on how it smells, and the standard is not smells like a specific product. The standard is much harder to achieve. No smell at all, or rather, the smell of clean air, the faint suggestion of whatever natural element is currently present. A branch of cedar in a vase, the very faint trace of incense burned earlier, the smell of tatami grass. Nothing synthetic, nothing heavy, nothing that announces itself. Achieving this requires consistent attention to the sources of bad odor before they develop. Kitchen waste managed promptly, bathroom ventilated after every shower, shoes stored in enclosed spaces or outdoors, bedding aired regularly, garbage never allowed to sit beyond the day. The result is not a house that smells like a product. It is a house that smells like peace. 23. Yoru no Rosettto, the nightly reset. Every night before sleeping, many Japanese people spend 10 to 15 minutes returning the home to a state of calm. This is not a deep clean, it is a reset. A deliberate return to baseline. The sofa cushions are straightened. The books on the coffee table are stacked or returned to shelves. The dishes are washed. The counters are wiped. The floor is swept if needed. Anything that wandered from its place is returned. By the time they go to bed, the home looks more or less like it did in the morning when they woke to a calm start. And here is what this creates. Tomorrow mornings that do not begin in debt. In a home without a nightly reset, every morning begins with yesterday's accumulation waiting for you. The visual weight of undone things, the low-level pressure of disorder. And many people don't even consciously notice this pressure until the first morning they wake up to a clean home and feel the difference immediately, physically, like a weight they didn't know they were carrying has been lifted. 10 minutes at night, 365 calm mornings a year. That is the mathematics of the nightly reset. 22. Ichimono ippai, one in, one out. This rule is so simple it almost doesn't need explaining. Almost. When something new enters the home, something else leaves. A new shirt means an old shirt is donated. A new kitchen tool means an old one is released. A new book means a red book finds a new reader. The result is a home that does not grow. The square footage stays the same. The storage capacity stays the same. But the things inside it are always rotating toward more useful, more current, more loved. In practice, this rule prevents the slow accumulation that is the true enemy of organized homes. Organizations don't fail dramatically. They fail slowly, one object at a time, as more enters and less leaves, until one day you look around and wonder how it all happened. One in, one out. The home stays the same size. The life inside it stays current. 21. Cassettu no kukan. Seasonal exchange, Japanese homes rotate. Not the furniture, the small things, the decorative elements, the accessories that give a room its mood. In spring, light colors, cherry blossom motifs, the feeling of renewal. In summer, glass, bamboo, the suggestion of cool. In autumn, warm colors, a maple branch and a vase, the scent of something earthy. In winter, warmth, ceramic, the quiet beauty of bare branches. Nothing stays forever. Nothing is meant to. This seasonal exchange does something that permanent decoration cannot. It keeps the home alive. It keeps you noticing it. You cannot stop seeing something you've looked at every day for 3 years. But when the home changes with the seasons, you keep looking. You keep seeing. It also means you need less. Instead of a full home's worth of decorative objects all present at once, you need only what belongs to this moment. The rest waits, stored away, making its own eventual return feel like a small homecoming. 20. Motinai no okite. Use it fully before you release it. Motinai is a word that expresses grief over waste. And one of its practical applications in the Japanese home is this. Objects are used to their completion before being replaced. The soap bar gets down to the last sliver. The notebook is filled to the final page. The towel is used until it is genuinely worn, not replaced when a newer one seems more appealing. This is not deprivation, it is respect. Respect for the object, for the resources that created it, for the money spent on it, for the person who will eventually need to dispose of it. And it has an unexpected organizational benefit. Homes that practice Motina have less accumulation. When you are committed to finishing what you have before replacing it, you think more carefully about what you acquire. You buy less. You waste less. Your home has fewer half-used, partially opened, mostly forgotten objects taking up space. Use it fully. Honor it completely. Then, and only then, let it go. 19. Shizukesa no ma. The rule of silence in the home. Japanese homes tend to have a lower baseline of noise than Western ones. Not silent, but quieter. And this is not accidental. There is a cultural understanding that sound affects the energy of a space, that a home with a constant soundtrack of television, loud music, background noise is a home that cannot breathe, cannot rest, cannot be itself. The television is not the default. Silence is the default. Noise is chosen when it serves a purpose. This changes something fundamental about being at home. When silence is the baseline, you actually rest when you are home. The nervous system settles. The mental fatigue that comes from constant stimulation begins to lift. The home becomes what a home is supposed to be, a place where recovery happens. You don't have to be quiet all the time, but try making silence the default rather than the exception. Try choosing sound consciously rather than reaching for it automatically. You may discover that what you've been missing isn't entertainment, it's peace. 18. Ofuro no Reigi, the sacred bath. In Japan, the bath is not a quick rinse before bed. It is a daily ritual with its own rules, its own etiquette, its own space and the emotional architecture of the day. You shower before you enter the bath. The bath water is for soaking, not washing. It is kept hot. In many households, the entire family uses the same bath water in sequence, which means the water must be kept clean, which means the washing happens outside the tub. You enter slowly. You stay until the heat has reached your core. You breathe. The bath is the formal end of the day, the transition from the world to rest. After the bath, the day is done. You are not picking up your phone. You are not answering emails. The bath marks a threshold in time, the way the Genkan marks a threshold in space. Most people bathe or shower. Far fewer have a bathing ritual. The difference is not the water temperature. It is the intention. It is treating this daily act not as a task to check off, but as a deliberate transition, a pause, a restoration. 17. Bashoga nakaribba kaimasen. If it has no place, it doesn't come. In. This rule is enforced before the purchase, not after. Before anything enters a Japanese home, the question is asked, where will this live? Not, I'll figure it out later. Not, I'm sure it will fit somewhere. Specifically, which shelf, which drawer, which corner has been designated for this object? If the answer is nowhere, the object doesn't come in. This prevents the accumulation that happens so invisibly and so gradually in most homes. The small purchases that seem to have room. The impulse buys that were placed just for now, somewhere temporary, and never moved. The gifts kept out of obligation that have no natural home. When space is the gatekeeper, you purchase differently. You appreciate what you already own more. You become selective not because you're trying to be minimal, but because you genuinely have nowhere for the excess. The home's capacity is finite. The question is not how much you can fit. The question is what deserves to be there. 16. Hikari no Junjo. Natural light. First, always before. Turning on a single artificial light. A Japanese home seeks natural light. Windows are opened or uncovered. Curtains are pulled back. The day's light is invited in before any substitute is reached for. This is partly practical. Natural light is better for the eyes, for mood, for the body's sense of time. But it is also philosophical. There is a priority order in a Japanese home. What nature provides comes first. What humans manufacture comes second, when necessary. The result is homes that feel alive in a way that artificially lit spaces do not. There is something different about reading by a window on a cloudy morning versus reading under a lamp. The experience is not equivalent. The lamp may be brighter, but the quality of presence is not the same. Let the day in first. Let the lamp be a supplement, not a replacement. 15. Tuano no Cookoro, the spirit of the toilet. Here is something that surprises many visitors to Japan. The toilet is treated with an almost reverent attention. Japanese bathrooms, even in modest homes, tend to have immaculate toilets. This is not occasional. This is constant, daily. There are specific brushes for specific surfaces. The area around the toilet is cleaned as carefully as the toilet itself. Many families have a small dedication to this space, a tiny decorative element, a seasonal cloth, a plant that signals this place matters. There is an old Japanese belief, present in various forms across different traditions, that the condition of the toilet reflects the fortune of the household. Whether you believe this literally or not, the practice it produces is real. When you treat the toilet as a space deserving care and respect, the entire bathroom is elevated, clean what is humble. Respect what is necessary. There is no hierarchy of worthiness among the rooms you inhabit. 14. Ashita no junbi. Prepare tomorrow, tonight. Every night, before the nightly reset is complete, there is a forward-looking practice, preparation for tomorrow. Clothes selected and set aside. Bag organized by the door with everything needed. Coffee maker prepared to turn on. Tomorrow's first obligation is made as easy as possible to begin. This is not obsessive planning. It is a specific and practical form of self-care, because tomorrow morning, the version of you who just woke up, who perhaps did not sleep as well as hoped, who is not yet fully alert, deserves not to have to make a dozen small decisions before you've even left the house. Tonight's 5 minutes of preparation is tomorrow morning's gift to yourself. 13. Suihaiman no okite. Horizontal surfaces breathe. We have talked about floors being clear. Japanese homes apply the same principle to all horizontal surfaces, and they apply it with a specific guideline that seems almost too simple to matter. A surface can hold what belongs to it. A bedside table can hold a lamp, a book, a glass of water. The kitchen counter can hold the coffee station, a cutting board, a small plant. The desk can hold the computer and what is needed to work. But every horizontal surface is limited to its purpose. It does not collect. It does not accumulate. It does not become a landing strip for objects in transit. When objects collect on surfaces, the surface disappears visually. The room becomes denser. The mind, reading the visual environment, feels pressure. When surfaces breathe, when you can see them, when there is space between the things on them, the mind reads the room as open, as manageable, as calm. Visual space is not wasted space. Visual space is the room giving your mind room to rest. 12. Kabunashi. Duplicate nothing without reason. In a well-organized Japanese home, you rarely find two of something unless two are genuinely necessary. One set of scissors in the place scissors live, one measuring tape, one stapler. This seems obvious until you start looking at most homes, including perhaps your own, and notice how many things exist in multiple copies, not because they are needed, but because someone forgot where one was and bought another, and eventually both were discovered, but neither was released. The rule of no unnecessary duplicates prevents two things. It prevents waste, obviously, but it also prevents the decision fatigue that comes from having too many options, even for something as simple as which scissors to use. 1. In its place. Always findable. Never duplicated out of forgetfulness. 11. Shinsitsu no seichi. The bedroom is a sanctuary. The bedroom in a Japanese home has a clear and protected purpose: sleep and rest. Not work, not exercise equipment, not a secondary living room, not storage overflow. This means the bedroom tends to be sparse. A sleeping surface, clean bedding, perhaps a bedside lamp and a book, clothes stored behind closed doors or in an adjoining space. No television, no desk, no clutter. There is a science behind this that aligns with traditional Japanese wisdom. The brain learns its environments. When you work in bed, the brain begins to associate the bed with alertness. When you watch television there, it associates that space with passive stimulation. The result is a nervous system that cannot settle when it needs to most. When the bedroom is only for sleep and rest, the brain knows. You enter, you begin to come down. The transition is faster. Sleep comes more easily. Protect the bedroom. Give it back its one job. 10. Soji no mai, ni, clean before you organize. This rule stops one of the most common organizational mistakes cold. Most people, when they decide to organize a space, begin by organizing. They sort, they categorize, they buy containers. They work in a space that is dusty, that has surfaces that haven't been wiped, that has a floor that hasn't been cleaned, and they wonder why the result never feels quite right. Japanese domestic practice is clear on this. You clean before you organize. Always. Without exception. First, the space is emptied, then cleaned, surfaces wiped, drawers cleaned out, corners swept. Then, and only then, does organization begin. The reason is partly practical. Organizing a dirty space produces an organized dirty space, which feels inadequate in a way you may not consciously identify but will definitely sense. But it is also psychological. A clean blank canvas invites organization in a way that a cluttered, dusty space resists. Clean first. Then order emerges naturally. 9. Mono no ichi. Everything has one home. We touched on this in the Dictionary of Places, but as a rule of daily life, it goes deeper. In a Japanese home, an object does not have several possible places. It does not live approximately near the kitchen, more or less in the right drawer. It has one place, specific, fixed, unchanging. This seems like rigidity. It is actually the opposite of effort. When an object has one home, you never decide where to put it. You never think about it. You simply return it. The decision was made once when you set up the system, and it was made correctly close to where the object is used in a space sized for it, in a category that makes sense. And after that, the decision never needs to be made again. The freedom of a fixed system is that it removes thousands of tiny decisions from your daily life. You are not managing your home constantly. Your home is managing itself, one home per object, always. The object knows where it lives. So do you. 8. Ma no chikara, the power of empty space. Ma is one of the most important concepts in Japanese aesthetics, and it translates as something between empty space and meaningful pause. It is the space between objects, the silence between words, the gap that gives meaning to what surrounds it. In a Japanese home, empty space is designed, preserved, protected. A shelf does not need to be full to be purposeful. A room does not need to be full of furniture to be warm. A wall does not need to be covered in art to be beautiful. In fact, the Japanese aesthetic often holds the opposite. What is not there is what creates the feeling. When you walk into a room that has too much in it, even if everything in it is individually beautiful, the experience is overwhelming. Your eye has nowhere to rest. Your mind cannot settle. There is no silence to let the beautiful things speak. When there is empty space, the objects that are present become visible. The eye moves to them. The mind lingers. The room has rhythm like music because there are pauses between the notes. Do not fill your home. Let it breathe. What is absent is not waste. It is the essential foundation that makes everything present meaningful. 7. Tsukaikiru made kaimasen. buy only when finished. This is the purchasing rule that underlies many of the other rules on this list. It is simple and quietly radical. You do not buy a replacement until the current thing is genuinely finished. Not nearly finished, not getting old. Finished. The shampoo is used to the last drop. The pen is written until it runs dry. The candle is burned until there is no more wax. The food in the pantry is consumed before new food is purchased to replace it. This practice has cascading effects. It prevents duplicate accumulation. It creates genuine appreciation for what you are using because you are aware of its finite nature. It introduces a natural rhythm of completion and renewal that feels satisfying in a way that constant replacement never does. There is something deeply pleasurable about finishing a thing, about reaching the end, about creating genuine space, not managed space, actual empty space that existed because something was used fully and released. Finish before you replace. Let endings happen before beginnings. 6. Kansha no jikan, thank the space, before you leave it. Some Japanese families practice a small habit that seems unusual at first. Before leaving the home in the morning, they pause briefly at the threshold and silently, or in a phrase, acknowledge the home. Thank it for shelter, for safety, for rest. This is not superstition, it is attention, because here's what it does. It forces you to be present for a moment before you rush into your day. It makes you conscious of the place you are leaving, and it creates a relationship with your home that is different from the relationship most people have, which is essentially unconscious, the home as a background, a container, a backdrop for life. When you acknowledge the home, you bring it into the foreground, even for a second, and that changes how you treat it when you are inside it. You clean what you see, you organize what you appreciate, you care for what you are grateful for. Thank the space. It holds more of your life than almost anything else. 5. Futsu no bi, beauty in the ordinary. Japanese aesthetic culture, particularly in its Zen expressions, has a profound appreciation for the ordinary. Not the impressive, not the expensive, not the rare, the ordinary. The way light falls on a wooden floor at a particular time of day, the steam rising from a cup of tea, the sound of rain on a window. The texture of a cotton sheet that has been washed so many times, it has become soft in a way that new fabric never is. This rule, applied to the home, means do not wait for extraordinary things to feel your home is beautiful. Find the ordinary things already there and actually see them. This is a practice. It requires training the eye to slow down, to notice, to appreciate the texture of a surface rather than rushing past it, to feel the weight of a well-made object rather than using it without attention. When you practice this, you stop needing more. You stop feeling the pull to buy the next thing, to renovate, to redecorate, because what is already there, when seen with the right kind of attention, is enough, more than enough. 4. Danshari no Cookoro, the heart of letting go. Danshari is a philosophy of 3 movements. Dan, refuse what is unnecessary. Sha, discard what does not serve. Re, detach from what remains. The 3rd movement is the hardest, and it is the one most people never reach. We learn with practice to refuse some things. We learn with effort to discard others. But detaching from what we keep, holding our possessions lightly, not gripping them, not defining ourselves by them, not fearing their loss, this is rare. And yet it is the rule that makes all the other rules possible. Because a home organized with a clenched fist, where nothing can be released, because everything is too important, too valuable, too defining, cannot truly breathe. When you hold things lightly, you can use them fully. When you are not afraid of their loss, you can enjoy their presence. When you know you can let go, you are free to appreciate what you have. The Japanese home is not one that has learned to pack more efficiently. It is one that has learned to need less, and to be entirely, genuinely at peace with that. 3. Kokoro no Kagami. The home is a mirror of the mind. Here is the rule that changes everything. In Japanese tradition, There is an understanding so fundamental that it underlies every other practice we have discussed today. The home and the mind are not separate. They are reflections of each other. This is not metaphor. This is not poetry. This is a practical observation about how human beings actually work. When the mind is chaotic, it externalizes that chaos. Objects are not returned to their places because the mind cannot hold the intention long enough. Surfaces accumulate because the mind is too scattered to complete the small actions that prevent accumulation. Rooms fill with objects bought to fill an internal emptiness that they cannot actually fill. And the reverse is equally true. When the home is chaotic, it creates chaos in the mind. The visual weight of clutter activates low-level stress. The constant background presence of undone things, of disorganization, of spaces that don't function correctly, produces a low-grade mental noise that many people have lived with for so long they no longer notice it, until it's gone. What this means in practice is that organizing your home is not simply a domestic task. It is an act of care for your own mind. Every drawer you organize, every surface you clear, every object you return to its place is creating an external order that your nervous system can rest inside of. And over time, this becomes a feedback loop. An organized home helps create a calmer mind. A calmer mind maintains an organized home more naturally. The two reinforce each other until the discipline required at the beginning becomes something closer to instinct. This is why the Japanese approach to home organization has survived for centuries. Not because it is clever, because it is true. The home and the mind are not separate. Care for one and you care for both. 2. Wabi-sabi no manabi, the lesson of imperfection. Wabi-sabi is the Japanese aesthetic that finds beauty in imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. The crack in the ceramic cup, the asymmetry of a handmade bowl, the mark on a wooden floor left by decades of living. Applied to home organization, this rule offers something almost impossible to find in modern productivity culture: permission. Your home does not need to be perfect to be peaceful. Your system does not need to be flawless to be functional. Your progress does not need to be complete to be meaningful. The crack in the system, the drawer that isn't quite right, the corner that still needs work, these are not failures. They are signs of a real life being lived. A home that shows signs of use is not a failed home. It is an inhabited one. This matters because perfectionism is one of the great enemies of organization. The person who cannot start because they cannot start perfectly. The person who gives up because one area got messy again. The person who believes organization is an all-or-nothing achievement rather than a continuous, imperfect, entirely human practice. Wabi-sabi says, begin imperfectly, continue imperfectly, find beauty in the imperfect progress, and keep going. 1. Kaizen no ai, the home of continuous improvement. Kaizen means improvement in small, continuous steps, not transformation, not renovation, not the dramatic before and after. 1% better today, another percent tomorrow. This is the most important rule for the simple reason that it is the only one that produces permanent change. Humans cannot sustain dramatic transformation. We can manage it briefly, in a burst of motivation, in a weekend of intensity, and then we collapse back toward our baseline. This is not weakness. This is physiology. This is how we are built. But we can sustain small. 1 drawer today, 1 shelf tomorrow, 5 minutes of the nightly reset, the seasonal exchange, the morning opening of windows. Any one of these takes almost no time, requires almost no energy. And when you actually start with just one thing and maintain it for 30 days, until it is automatic, something happens. You want more of that feeling. The calm that comes from one organized drawer makes you want another organized drawer. The peace of waking to a clean home makes you want to maintain that peace. The feedback loop that is Wabi-sabi's permission and Kaizen's patience begins to move on its own. This is what generations of Japanese families have known. Not that their homes are perfect, not that they never get messy, Not that they have access to something the rest of the world doesn't. They know only this: small acts, practiced consistently, with patience, with kindness toward yourself. When you drift and return, build a home that supports life rather than complicating it. 1% better, every day, in the direction of a home that feels like rest. That is the Japanese way. These 30 rules were not written in any book. They were lived in homes across Japan, passed quietly from one generation to the next, not as obligations, but as gifts. You don't need to adopt all 30. You couldn't, and you shouldn't try. Choose 2 or 3 that resonated today, the ones that made something shift in you as you heard them. Practice only those for the next 30 days. Let them become natural. Let them become part of how you live. Then, when they no longer require effort, add 2 or 3 more. The Japanese home is not built in a weekend. It is built in 30 years of small mornings, of nightly resets, of one object returned to its place, of one drawer cleaned before another is touched, of one thing let go when a new thing arrives. You are already beginning. This moment, this attention, this watching and listening is already the beginning. If this video helped you see your home differently, leave a like so more people can find these ideas. And tell me in the comments, which of these 30 rules do you want to start with? I read every answer. Thank you for being here. Organize well.